So by a factor of 2, this is the longest walkability study I've ever worked on, and I'll hold it up for a second, but this is double-sided. Now, it's kind of cheating because this much of it, exactly half of it, is traffic analyses that were necessary in order to make the judgments that fill the rest of it, but it's 250 pages. I think the longest one I did before was about 120, but there's a simple reason for that, which is that we've never had this sheer number and length of streets to analyze. So the study area is more than a square mile. It's conveniently bounded very clearly by the IDL, which is about a mile square. It's about 30 streets, each of one is about a mile long, and we literally looked at every street block by block. Now, the walkability study is not just about streets, but the streets are the part that the city can fix the fastest and the most directly. I like to talk about, what the general theory of walkability says. What is it that will get people to walk? And to get people to walk in a driving city like Tulsa, the walk has to be simultaneously useful, safe, comfortable, and interesting. Well, useful is what stuff's lining the streets, and comfortable and interesting also has to do with the mostly private things that are shaping spaces and then giving friendly faces to those spaces. Those 3 things, useful, comfortable, and interesting, are pretty much private sector, and the city can control them long-term with things like zoning, but short-term, not as much. And so what the city can do quickly and make an immediate impact is make the streets safer. And what you have here is a whole bunch of streets that in between the curbs don't even have to move, but in between the curbs have been designed to maximize speed and to minimize feelings of safety and the fact of safety for pedestrians. So a typical street, and this is what we learned also in Oklahoma City, a typical street that's 4 lanes wide, if you analyze the traffic, which is what this is all about, you find that it only needs 2 to 3 lanes of 2 to 3 lanes of throughput to easily, without congestion, handle the traffic that's on it now and that's anticipated into the future. And so that gives you this grist to work with, which is a lane here, a lane there, which can become parking where parking's missing. It can turn parallel parking into angle parking, or it can be used for bike lanes. And what we've tried to do is lay in a nice comprehensive bike network in the downtown. Not every street, but every 4 streets or so will have good bike lanes in them. And then all the extra space we have, we can provide more on-street parking, which of course is gold to merchants. So in so doing, we are then making the streets safer, more comfortable to walk on. People are more likely to drive the speed limit, which is a nice calm 25. Literally we've provided, to answer your question, literally we've provided plans for every block of every street in the IDL where we feel that change makes sense. And honestly, it's almost every street. I've worked in a lot of cities that had a lot of opportunity to change quickly, but I think Tulsa has the most ability to see a market increase the most quickly because your bones are good. You've got the small 300-foot blocks that have almost not been broken up at all with super blocks or other things that impede that porous movement through the city, and small blocks are actually key to walkability. You've got this incredible collection of buildings, and some quite remarkable, one of the best collections, if not the best collection. It's arguable. I lived in Miami, so I'm a little bit partial, but some say the best collection of Art Deco buildings in America, which are great to walk around. You have a lot of jobs downtown. You don't have perceptions, or at least you don't have accurate perceptions of crime or fear of being downtown. But I think the reason why you can improve so quickly is because your principal problem is the design of the streets, which you can fix so quickly, right? There's a longer term problem to fix, which you're already working on, which is how many people are living in your downtown. And I think there's a real challenge there because there's a lot of impediments to providing attainably priced housing in your downtown, and it's only that lower priced housing that will attract the large numbers of people who are ready to move into your downtown. That's a bit of a longer push. But I think that, to be very honest with you, it's currently not a very walkable city, but it has the potential to be a walkable city very soon. I think Tulsa has the right goals. I mean, the goals are to be a successful place, to have a downtown you're proud of, to attract corporations, to attract talent, to attract millennials. And one city I worked in said, if we don't attract young people to our city, we don't have a future. And that's true. And study after study shows us that to succeed these days, it isn't about having a technology cluster or some other newfangled economic development tool, but simply to be a place where people want to be. And more people, particularly empty nesters and millennials, want to have a lifestyle in which the automobile is not something they rely on every day to do everything. Like, they can still own a car, and there's ample room for it in downtown Tulsa, but to have that lifestyle where you can walk to the store, walk to the restaurant, maybe even walk to work, certainly walk to sports and other events and nightlife, which is already there, that's something that's really attractive to people. And people who have a choice to live wherever they want, who more and more are choosing urban places, we want downtown Tulsa to be on that list of an urban place that they'd want to live in. I use the same process I use everywhere, which is to come here for a solid week with my teammate, and we spent the majority of the time walking, but we spent every morning entirely in meetings. And we asked our hosts to pick the people, not who we needed to meet with, but who could give us the most information. So we had 10 different meetings with different stakeholder groups. Yes, to make sure they were listened to, but mostly to learn as much as we could about the city, because we don't live here. So, having a national practice, we're hopefully bringing best practices, and evidence-based solutions that we've seen work well nationwide. We're bringing them to Tulsa, but we don't know Tulsa. At least we didn't. I feel like I know Tulsa pretty well now. You can quiz me on any street, any block, but we spent all those meetings essentially picking the brains of the people, district by district, and in some cases, interest by interest, businessmen versus, restaurateurs versus all these other things. And we learned a tremendous amount that influenced the outcome. I talk a lot in my book, Walkable City, about the whys, the 4 whys of walkability, and there's actually, it's 3. I came up with the 4th since I wrote the book. But the 3 main ones are the economic reasons, the health reasons, and the environmental reasons. Depending on who you are and what you focus your interests on, you might find one of these to be more valuable or more valid than the others. But it's been a fascinating experience as a planner watching these 3 groups, the economists, the epidemiologists, and the environmentalists, all turned to walkability as a solution for issues that they were facing in their worlds. So the epidemiologists make it very well. I should go in order. So the economists make it very clear that the places that are more walkable are generating more patents, are selling real estate for more, and are just generally more productive places. And moreover, the flip side of that, places that are auto-dependent are wasting a tremendous amount of money, not just stuck in traffic, but on essentially moving around to get from everything to everything else, where things could be closer at hand and more easy to get to. It's a real drain on the economy to have to do that. The epidemiologists talk a lot about how we've kind of built out of existence in so much of America the useful walk. And the reason we have an obesity crisis, and this was a big issue with Mayor Cornett when I was brought into Oklahoma City, one of the reasons why we have an obesity crisis and all the related health crises in this country is that people aren't active anymore, and a huge part of that is a function of the built environment. It's not just that gym class needs to be longer, or we got to get our kids to walk to school, which we should try to do, but that walks are no longer useful, and so walks are no longer taken, right? And then the whole environmental discussion has changed from one that was years ago anti-city in America. The environmentalists tended to love the country and hate the city, to one that's very pro-city, because it turns out that if you measure carbon per household or carbon per person, it's the lowest in the densest cities. If you want to have the smallest possible carbon footprint, move to an urban place. And now that that's understood, if that's something that matters to you, which to a lot of us it does, that's all the more reason to make our cities more walkable. It isn't that I found it, it's that I'm reading article after article about how walkable cities are now attracting more talent, are able to charge higher rents, I read an article the other day about how walkability has been identified as an important right that cities have to give to their citizens. There's all these people clamoring for it, which is why I'm glad that I chose that term. A lot of great stuff's been done already. Boston and Maine have been changed from one-way travel to two-way travel. Cheyenne and Boulder are about to be, and I've modified the plans for those. There's a lot of other changes that are similar to the ones that are in the report. Bike lanes have started to be added. The introduction of rear-angled parking on so many names to keep straight. The introduction of rear-angled parking on Cincinnati, where that also removed an unnecessary driving lane because the volumes just weren't there to need it. So that stuff has already been happening. Also, I should say that the engineering department's been extraordinarily supportive and has supported the traffic study we've done that says we can cut maybe a third of the lanes out of the downtown and turn them into other things. That itself is a great encouragement to me. And unlike other studies I've done where the engineering department was at arm's length, I've been basically embedded in the engineering department, and we've been meeting with them regularly, so we're not throwing something over the wall. This is presented with their implicit support. Yes, there are some details that we're still ironing out, but we're almost entirely of a mind when it comes to what we're recommending. It's very important, and I do it in the report, to be honest about the impact of some of these changes. For example, we're proposing, at least in the short term, to eliminate all but one in each direction of the green waves that allow you to ride the green lights through the downtown without ever stopping. We want to keep one green wave north-south and one east-west, but get rid of the others. And that's a little bit of an inconvenience, but how much of an inconvenience is it? And it's important to say to the person who only zips in the morning and zips out at night, yes, we might be asking you for 45 seconds or a minute or two, like 2 max per day of time that you're not just zooming through the downtown. But maybe it might be worth it to you to pay that price to have a downtown that you don't want to just zip in and zip out of. Like, wouldn't it be great to have a place that instead of just being good to get through is good to arrive at? And the sort of change like that is a trade-off, but the amount that you gain in vitality and excitement and pride for your city for what it costs, I feel is a clear win. And I think that most people will reach that agreement once they see how it's been done in other places. We have an unusual circumstance in Tulsa. This is my latest walkability study. I've done about 14 of them. The first one was in Oklahoma City. And it was, the effort started about 10 years ago. But that led to a vastly different circumstance, which is they had $200 million to spend because of the construction of Devon Tower. And we rebuilt almost every street in the downtown core. Here we're not proposing that. Here we're proposing that almost all the changes will be done with paint, simple resurface, and then a reconfiguration with paint and very little construction. So it's a lot cheaper. And I would like to think that we can get 90% of the outcome at 10% of the cost, and I'm very excited about that.